Hey everyone, welcome back to Kali Plants. Me again, Mark. Today we're back at the greenhouse and it's an early morning that I will be recording today because I have been busy yesterday, so I wasn't able to shoot a video. So I'm gonna be recording this and editing this at the same day, and I'm gonna be releasing it today. Okay, hopefully I can be able to release this one, and also I hope that my recording is not off, because the last time that I recorded the microphone was off and then I didn't have any audio to work with. So yeah, that's about it. So for this video, we're gonna be talking about succulents that can tolerate a lot of heat, because I know this is a concern for all of you who are growing in the lowlands here in the Philippines, who get very high temperatures and you're afraid that your succulents might burn. So if you're gonna be buying plants, then these succulents might have a higher success of acclimating in your area, especially now that we're getting into the summer seasons. And also what I find with these succulents are some of these are also very drought tolerant, so they can tolerate a little bit of dryness. Even if it's hot, they will not necessarily burn right away, and they will also not wilt and not desiccate that much, because they are a little bit of drought tolerant and heat tolerant as well. So that's what we're gonna be talking about today. Okay, so now I just use something to cover up the sun so that the sun won't be directly on my face. Okay, and I'm actually glad that I have this set up. Maybe I will show that later. Okay, so now we're gonna be talking about heat tolerant succulents, and let me just go with the ones that people are not that interested, but I find it interesting, these plants really. And these are the cacti. Yes. Now, I know a lot of my viewers don't grow cacti. A lot of them are saying that cacti are spiky and I don't want to touch that, and I don't want to grow that because it might injure me. Okay, and yes, that is also a very real concern, especially if you're growing with children around. If you have children in your house and you're growing succulents, so that might be a concern. But for me, cacti are very interesting. They have these nice bulbous bodies, but also they are not really the same. A lot of cacti can also have some variety, have some differences, have changes in color, and also with the way that their spikes grow. So there are a lot of different varieties of cacti out there that you can try, and most of them, I would say, are much more tolerable, much more tolerant of heat and of drought, because they are really these stocky, large sized succulents that have these bulbous bodies. And what I find with my cacti, I can neglect them as much as I want. They don't demand that much water. So really, growing cacti here in my place takes the least amount of effort, I would say, when it comes to growing succulents. Though let me just also remind you that cacti are still plants. If you neglect them for too long, they will shrink and they will get smaller in size. But if you water them right away, they can sometimes just plump back up again. They can return to their original size. And if you want your cacti to continuously grow, you have to continuously water it as well once the potting mix is dry, and once you see some signs of wrinkling on your cactus, on your cacti. This one is a little bit dry. Okay, and yeah, I've been neglecting it. It's here in a hot part of my greenhouse. This side of the greenhouse actually gets a lot of light. It kind of gets a lot of heat in its area, but you can see that it's still alive. Yes, and sometimes some cacti will actually look better and grow faster in the heat, and sometimes their spikes will be much more pretty looking in the heat. We have talked about it before, because cacti spikes are actually some type of protection against the heat. Yes, so that's what you can try. This is a Gymnocalycium. I forgot the exact name. Okay, but it has this nice wavy type of spikes. Okay, really nice Gymnocalycium. There are a lot of different Gymnocalyciums out there you can try. There are variegated versions. I have other cacti here as well. This is the bunny ears cactus, Opuntia microdaisies. Okay, I have been able to grow this from a propagation. Okay, you can see that, because my other bunny ears cactus was not doing, because it was in a bad potting mix. So I took off an ugly looking pad and then I planted it down lower, so that when it grows, the much better, much healthier looking pads will be more prominent. Okay, so that's what I did, and that's what you can do probably with your bunny ears cacti as well. You can plant down their ugly pads, and from those pads you can grow much better looking pads. Okay, but this one also will like a little bit of organic materials in their potting mix. Even though cacti are growing originally in the desert, they don't necessarily like to be planted in a very inorganic type of potting mix, especially now that they're being cultivated and they are much smaller in size. They might appreciate it if you add a little more organic materials in their potting mix, because what I tried with my old potting mix that is almost pure pumice, my cacti were not doing very well. They were not plumping back up. Okay, so that's what you can do. And if you plant them right, they're very tolerant of neglect, of drought, and of heat. You can just forget them for weeks and they will not mind it, and if you water them, they will just plump back up. They're not like other succulents, leafy succulents, that will desiccate leaves if you neglect them for a very long time, because they don't have leaves. They only have their stems that contain water that will just shrink down and plump back up if you water them again. So that's what cacti are. That's how cacti are growing, and that's how you can expect them to grow, and that's one of their traits to survive these really harsh conditions. Now we also have here some more collectible type of cacti that are sometimes rare in some areas, but here in the Philippines they're not that rare, and I'm actually having kind of a hard time growing these, and also I've been neglecting them a lot. These are Astrophytum cacti, okay, cactuses, and these are two varieties that I have. This one has a lot more whitish dots, and this has some white on it, okay. And I heard that this one is hybrid of Astrophytum of two different species that are crossed together, which is why we get this type of Astrophytum, and this is Myriostigma if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so yeah, there's that. So these Astrophytums I've talked about with a lot of experts before. You can check out my grower interviews here on the channel. They all said that Astrophytum are very tolerant of heat, and they actually grow a little more in hotter areas, which is why we have clubs here in the Philippines that grow exclusively Astrophytums and cacti and aloes, because they find more success with these plants in the lowlands, in the area that they live in. They don't have to worry about them that much, even if it gets a little too hot. Though I would say that Astrophytums can still get sunburned, but that only happens if you don't establish them right away. But once they're established, they're really plant and forget type of succulents. You don't need to bother with them a lot anymore. You can see they can retain that nice beautiful look on them, even if you don't mind them often. So these are the most neglected plants here in my greenhouse, okay, along with my other cacti, because I don't mind them, because I don't usually show them in videos, and also other people are not interested in them. But since that we're talking about heat tolerant and drought tolerant succulents, I think it's best to highlight some of these cacti, and you should also try some of them, because look at this one. These are not spiky cacti, so there are also varieties that you can grow that you don't have to bother with the spikes, because there are some spikeless cacti also out there. Now let's go on to the next genus that we're going to be talking about, and those are aloes, because yeah, these are plants that most people are not interested in. Yeah, most of my viewers are not interested in, and these are okay. I actually have 4 different type of aloes here. This is one that I got very recently. I think I have featured this one time, okay, in the channel, so not that often, okay. But this is a really nice looking hybrid, and you can see it reminds you of something of a salty type of plant because of the spikes, the patterns that it has. It's really nice, and if you touch it, these leaves are really thick, and yeah, and that's really interesting for me. You can see that whitish colors on it, combined with the bluish green undersides of the leaf. The leaf actually has bluish green colors, and it has just these freckles or dots. And you might also notice that there are some teeth in these aloes, okay. Some teeth in some other aloes can be injurious, okay. They can sometimes prick you, but I don't think that most of them do, okay. Some of them are still quite avoidable. You can touch the underside of the leaves and it won't have any pricks on them, just on the upper side, okay. So there's that. There's a nice looking hybrid. It's already producing babies at the sides, okay. And aloes are some of the more, how would I say this, pricier succulents. If you're planning to build a business of growing succulents, aloes are a much better investment compared to other succulents, because aloes don't drop down their prices that much. They retain these high prices for a very, very long time, especially if you have this more expensive hybrids, cultivars, the ones that have more interesting colors and textures. Most of the time they will retain their high prices. Even if you propagate them, you won't have to sell them for very cheap prices because they don't have a lot of competition. Since they are not that fast of a propagator, not that fast of a grower, especially with these more expensive hybrids, they don't pop very often. They don't produce a lot of pops very quickly. So yeah, they can retain their high prices in the long time. Okay, for a long period of time. I have another aloe here. This is another one of those more expensive ones. Actually, I invested in these aloes a while back because I wanted to have some other interesting succulents here as well. And you can see this one has stayed compact because I planted it in a smaller container. Okay, this is I don't know the idea anymore really. Okay, but this is one of those other hybrids that we have around, and you can see here on the edges it has really red teeth. Okay, and we also have these nice textures on the leaves that are red in color, in contrast to the purplish dark leaves that it has. Really nice, really interesting, really has that cool look to it that you won't find in other succulents, this type of textures. Okay, it has that nice like a punk looking type of a succulent. Okay, so really interesting, and you can also see a lot of different variations with these aloes. Really, this is just one of the many hybrids that are out there. You can also collect some species because there are some pure aloes also out there in the market, and those pure species sometimes they are not often hybridized, so you can also get some of the more classy aloes. But what I like with some of them also stay on the more compact size. They're hybridized that way that they won't grow very large, and this I think is one of those varieties. You can keep them small if you contain them in a small container, but they will usually outgrow it, and once you manage to put them in a large pot, you can see how much growth that they can have, and some of them can get really compact. This one can go probably in the more medium-sized aloe. Okay, you can see there's already a pop right here. Okay, so hopefully if I manage to grow this a little more, we can get more pops and we can sell it later on or give it away. Okay, so we have that, and then we have also this one. This is another aloe hybrid. Okay, you can see my leaves on the aloes that I have are broken off. Okay, because they usually bump into other plants here. I'm looking at it right now. I think there's already another pop. Okay, it's just a dead leaf. Okay, so there's another pop right now growing out of it. Yes, that's really interesting. That wasn't there before. Okay, so there's another pop here, and then there's another pop here, but this one was already there when I bought it. This is one of those Cameronii hybrids. Oh, not Cameronii. I keep mixing up the names. One of those I really forgot the name. Okay, it's on the tip of my tongue really. It's a type of woody aloe. Okay, so that type of woody aloe is actually a collectible one, a very rare and very slow growing aloe that is very compact but has this trailing habit once it grows, and you won't usually find aloes that are trailing, but that is the pure species, and I think this is one of the hybrids that it has. But it's very different already. You can see that it has narrow leaves that grow long and also get very messy. Look at it. It looks like an octopus placed upside down inside the pot. Okay, so that's really interesting. This is actually growing outside in my rain or shine location, and I don't water it often. Okay, I will only water it probably if it gets too hot for a very long time and I don't get any rain here in my area. Probably I will water them with a watering can. But you can see here it has retained its nice shape for the longest time that I've had it. I don't have any issues on it, and you can see it also has some of that reddish color. But really nice, really interesting type of aloe, and I really like it. And probably I will start separating the pups, but once they're fully grown, once they're much more mature, probably I will separate them. But I really like these types of aloes. Okay, so we have that, and finally we have a much more compact aloe hybrid. This is not a pure aloe. Okay, this is a Gaster Aloe. I've shown this several times, but what I would also say with succulents that you would think that are more tolerant of heat and of sunlight are succulents that have larger leaves and thicker leaves. So Gasterias, how would I say this? Gasterias, Haworthias that are hard leaf, that are not window type leaf Haworthias or Haworthiopsis. And also we have other varieties as well, Tulistas. They are also much more tolerable of high heat, just like with this Gaster Aloe green eyes that we have. Okay, I don't have any issues on it, and actually I don't see it burning even if it's in the more hotter side of the greenhouse, and it really has that nice interesting pattern. You can also touch it, you can feel it. It's not like your other sensitive echeverias that you don't want to touch because they have these farinas. So that's what you can expect with this type of aloes. Okay, now we're gonna go to our echeverias finally, and not all echeverias I would say are tolerant of high heat, so I will be giving you some tips probably, but the ones that are more tolerant of heat and of extreme conditions are the Gibiflora hybrids, and there are actually a lot of Gibiflora hybrids. Those are ones that have caruncles. Those we have some types that are mutations, and some of them can grow into very large rosette appearances as well, just like with your other echeverias. So these large growing Gibiflora hybrids are very varied. You can collect a lot of them, and one of them is this Diamond State Varigata that I have. It's been growing here at the middle of my greenhouse, which gets direct sun from morning till afternoon, because the sun rises over on that side and it sets on this side, and it hits this part of the greenhouse virtually all day. They just have some protection at the middle of the day because of the coconuts that we have. So this one is one that I planted right out of the box, planted straight in this container and planted straight here in the middle of the greenhouse, and it's done very well. Okay, you can see there is just some shrinking on the side of the leaf here, because probably it's due to it establishing still. So yeah, it must have been taking up the energy from its old leaves to establish a little bit. So some echeverias will still do that, some Gibiflora hybrids will still do that, but so far all the new growth that it has is very much consistent. You don't see burning on this one, and you can feel it really. If you touch the leaves are much more firm, much more harder than those much more softer echeverias that are much more sensitive to high light, because once you touch those other types, really their leaves kind of feel like they're very delicate. But with the Gibiflora hybrids, they're not that delicate. They're very thick, very tough, and you can pretty much say that they are very tolerant of high heat, and also drought tolerant. They don't need a lot of care. They don't demand that attention compared with your other smaller echeverias, and they're also very drought tolerant because you can neglect them for a few days and they will not desiccate that much, because they have these such large leaves that they can survive for a few days without watering. That is what I would say with the Gibiflora. So this is just one type, the Diamond State. Okay, I think this is the first time that I will be showing this. We also have some other Gibiflora hybrids. This is Heart's Delight. Okay, they also root quite nicely, especially if they're not the variegated type, but this is the Heart Delight, one of the more collectible and one of the more beautiful echeveria hybrids out there. Now, there are a lot of Gibiflora hybrids. Sometimes they are hybridized so that they can grow smaller, but I think that they can still retain that heat tolerance and that drought tolerance even if they are grown smaller. The Echeveria Suyon is another Gibiflora hybrid. Echeveria imbricata, another Gibiflora hybrid. Graptoveria fredives, Gibiflora hybrid. You can really know that those classics, those more common succulents, are very tough because they're hybridized with Gibifloras. Okay, this is one of the newer varieties that I have, and this is the Echeveria pistachio, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of reminds you of a Harry Watson really, with its large leaves, but they say that this is an Echeveria. And what I noticed with mine, once it got here, it started producing these caruncles. So I don't know if that is natural or if that is normal for the pistachio, but it started producing these caruncles on its new growth here in my area, probably because it's been getting a lot more light. So if you have caruncles on your echeverias, giving them more light is much more beneficial to them, and also not watering them too much and not fertilizing them too much. If you water them too much and fertilize them too much and they start etiolating and they also get minimal light, they will lose their caruncles. So they are kind of like stress colors for these plants. They only appear if the plants are neglected, if the plants are stressed a little bit, if they're not given all the nutrients in the world. Okay, but probably you will also buy this plant in the highlands without caruncles, and it will develop caruncles once it gets into your hotter area and the lowlands. Now I would still recommend that you acclimate your succulents. Now if you don't have that high temperatures yet, probably in the spring, or if you're transitioning from winter to summer, if you buy your succulents earlier before the summer, like in winter time or in the colder season in your area, then you can establish them first before summer comes, so that once summer comes, they are already rooted and they won't have any issues with the heat and with the drought and with the high amount of sunlight that they will be receiving, because they have some roots under them. Now with this one, I just planted it in a small container because I'm still acclimating it, but once it really manages to grow and once I know that it's very much thick already and it's not wrinkling, not shriveling anymore, then probably I will transfer it into a bigger container so that it can grow into its full size. So that's just what you can expect with the gibifloras. Really, a lot of them will be large growing echeverias. They don't stay compact for very long. So yeah, if you want those large growing echeverias and if it's very hot in your area, then you can grow these gibiflora hybrids. But still, I would say that there are some varieties of them that are more compact because they have been really hybridized a lot, these gibiflora echeverias. And I think that these people who hybridize a lot, I think they use the echeveria gibiflora to really toughen up their hybrids, their succulents, because gibifloras are much more drought tolerant and much more tougher all around than your usual other echeverias. Now I also have another one here. I think this is the last one that we were showing, and a leaf just broke off. This is echeveria decora. I featured this several times. You can see it already has grown in a tall manner. It already looks like a tree, and that's what you can expect with your gibifloras if you don't water them very often. They might sometimes lose their lower leaves, and they will also etiolate, start growing upright if they don't get the right amount of sunlight that they need, and also they will lose a lot of their colors if they don't get the right amount of sunlight. So yeah, but they're also much more tolerant with their potting mixes. I would just say avoid using too much pumice on them still, because yeah, they still need some nutrients to survive, but they have these larger roots compared with your other echeverias. They are not that very slow of a rooter, these echeveria gibifloras. So those type of succulents you can research and you can try on your own. Now there are other traits with echeverias as well that you might want to look into if you're growing in a high heat situation, and one of them I would say is the farina and the other is the fuzziness. So I have two here. Let's just go with the more farina filled echeverias. Okay, so these echeverias, the one that has a lot more farina, can tolerate a lot of sun, especially if you establish them really nicely. If you don't rush them, just hold off on giving them too much sunlight if they are still unrooted. But once you have the right potting mix on it, and once you manage to establish it well, then you can grow a lot more farina out of your echeverias, and they will tolerate a lot more sun because of those whitish farina, and those farina will actually be much more prominent in high light conditions. But what I would say with these echeverias, they grow a little more if they have hot or kind of mild temperature at the day and colder temperatures at night. So yeah, that's how echeverias grow. They have this cycle of cold and hot, which will make them grow a little more. So if you're growing in an area that gets hot even at night, so that might be quite challenging for these type of echeverias. Okay, so there's that. Another echeveria that is very common, and you won't waste a lot of money if you buy this, but still very interesting and has a lot of farina. This is the echeveria topsy-turvy. Okay, this plant I got from a recent trade with a neighbor here in my place. Okay, she has a lot of echeveria topsy-turvys. She had been able to grow her topsy-turvy large, and this one is a much more clumping type of echeveria. Okay, you can see it has a lot of babies already right there at the bottom. Okay, and it's really interesting with its upturned leaves and also its thick farina. Once you give it enough sunlight, you can see a lot of farina on this one. Kind of reminds you of a Aloe hybrid really, but it's not. It's a Echeveria runionii topsy-turvy. And the leaves can also get thick if you neglect it. If you don't water it very often, and if it's not etiolating, the leaves can also get thicker than this one really, because this one hasn't been growing here. I'm still acclimating it here. Yeah, so I'm still managing to make it grow thicker leaves. So a lot of people are actually asking me, how do you transition your thin-leafed echeverias to thicker-leafed ones? Don't water them very often is my answer. Give them also a lot of light, because with a lot more stress, they will actually try to make their leaves thicker so that they can tolerate the stressful conditions that they're in. But if you grow them in a shady area, give them a lot of water, their leaves will just stay thin and stay longer, and they won't have these closed rosettes that you would usually want to see in echeverias. Okay, the light is already on us right now. It's making contrast on our video. Okay, and the last one, the last trait that you can also look to if you are growing in a high light condition is the fuzziness of their leaves. Okay, so this is an echeveria harmsii or pulvinata. Okay, probably pulvinata frosty, and this is very challenging for me to grow really, but a lot of people are saying that these leaves are protection against the sunlight because they have this fuzziness. And also I've observed with my echeveria fuzzy ones, fuzzy echeverias and fuzzy calanchos, really you can get more fuzz out of them if you give them more sun. So that's what you would probably want if you're going in a high light condition, to have more fuzziness on your echeverias. Yes, but once you establish this one, really it just continuously grow. It's one of those clumping type of echeverias, so that is one that you can try growing in your area. Okay, but I would not rely on this too much in a very hot location which gets dry for a very long time, because they can still desiccate. So you have to be more careful about these ones than the others that I've shown earlier. Okay, so I'm just saying that they still have some protection against the sun because they are still fuzzy. Okay, now what I would recommend avoiding really, if you're going in a very hot type of location, avoid this very small leaf type of succulents, because small leaf succulents can get very dry very quickly, especially if you don't have the right potting mix on them and if you're not watering them often. And with these small leaf type of succulents that clump up readily, they sometimes look good as ground covers. They are these carpeting bushy type of succulents. If you don't water them often, they will also desiccate a lot. Yeah, but if you water them very often, they will often grow a lot, produce a lot of babies. I've had experience with those. But if you're growing in a very hot condition, you might still want to be more attentive to those small type clumping succulents. And also succulents that don't have farina, because those will tend to be on the more sensitive side really, especially if you haven't established them right away. If they don't have farina, they don't have that protection against the sun. So I would say that with the purpusorum, with the longissima type of echeverias, because they don't have a lot of farinas, you have to be mindful of where to place them. You might want to give them some shade over them so they don't burn very quickly. But with the gibifloras, even if they don't have thin farinas on them, they can still tolerate a lot of sun. I am actually growing another gibiflora of mine outside because it's very tolerable of the heat and it's not burning. And I will probably show you a video of that gibiflora, one of the nicest succulents that I have. You can use that on your landscape. So yeah, I think there's about it for our heat tolerant echeverias. If you really like those varieties, please make sure to hit the thumbs up. You can try them out with your sellers. Look for them if you're gonna be buying your succulents this summer season. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe on the buttons below, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.